some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
And today we're tackling Halloween 2, 1981. Kennedy can give us a short little plot summary.
After failing to kill stubborn survivor Lori and taking a bullet or six from former psychiatrist Dr. Sam Loomis, Michael Myers has followed Lori to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where she's been admitted for Myers' attempt on her life. The institution proves to be particularly suited to serial killers, however, as Myers cuts, stabs, and slashes his way through the hospital staff to reach his favorite victim.
So, right off the bat, this movie, though shot in 1980 and released in 1981, picks up mere seconds after the original ends. It literally spends the first 5 to 10 minutes replaying the entirety of that last climactic fight between Lori Loomis.
It's a little awkward, I think, to some people to see the ending all over again. I guess it's there for people who hadn't watched the first one.
I mean, also during that time, there wasn't any internet or YouTube. VHS was still relatively new, so people probably forgotten how the movie ended. So that was kind of the norm, because if we ever touch the Friday the 13th series, all those movies starts with a recap of the one before.
You know, you're absolutely true. I completely forgot. I guess unless people had the VHS, there's really no other way to watch the movie again. So
yep,
that's actually kind of good, I guess, that it's in there for that purpose.
Gives them a little refresher course almost. Okay, this is how. And then when it picking up right after the ending, I'm okay, I kind of get it, which only distracts me because seeing those last clips of that movie and then seeing Lori again. The hair, the wig is so noticeable for me.
I personally hadn't noticed it until you brought it up. I always did think that her hair was a little bit more noticeable than the last one, but
well,
yeah.
That was because by 1980 she had Jamie Lee Curtis had adapted her most noticeable hairstyle, which was the short little pixie cut with the brunette brownish hair, which she still currently has. It's just got a little gray because she's older, but yeah, so she'd need a wig, and plus they had to keep her hair in the style of 1978. So
yeah.
But then we have the movie. It opens with after the recap, it goes to Michael, and he sees a dog. Given that we watched him murder 2 dogs in the last movie, I was like, this dog is about to get it. But he doesn't kill the dog. He goes into the house, and there is Mr. and Mrs. Elrod. I don't think we ever see Mr. Elrod, but I know we saw Mrs. Elrod.
Well, he's sleeping on the couch.
You sleep again.
But he doesn't kill her either. He grabs her knife and then leaves, and then she screams. And now that was it. And I was like, okay, so that's what, 3 people, if we count the dog, that he just walks past. But then
don't forget that at this point he's injured. So
yeah, but he was injured. But when he sees that girl, Alice, who was yelling out to check on the Elrods,
Mrs. Elrod, Mr. Elrod.
He stalks her and kills her. Her death scene when he did he shove that thing in her forehead or he slit her throat? I always forget.
Oh, I just actually watched that kill earlier today. It looks like he kind of just stabs her in the chest. Or is it from the back? I'm not actually too sure because it's not a good angle to see it from. But it's a good tension building moment because she's in her house and she gets the phone call and they're telling her about what just happened and.
Hear about what?
Some girl got killed in Haddonfield.
I can't believe it.
I know. You know, we probably knew her.
Where did it happen?
Down on Orange Grove.
That's right down the street. Sally, I can hear the sirens coming.
And then you see from behind the door.
He just appear. Yeah, because the front door is open, and then I'm like, your front door is open. You run the fuck out of the house. You don't hesitantly move.
She walks towards the door that she saw that was open, and then bam! That's when you get the legendary
theme. The new version of the theme, which I don't like at all.
Yes.
I don't like that new theme.
Well, the theme from the beginning you hear it. The Halloween theme is definitely different than
It has
the
the more
first one.
80s like electric guitar.
80s
Yeah.
synth kind of vibe,
I mean,
more to it.
I'm okay with this version more than the version that we're gonna get in part 4. So now we like the EMTs are picking up Lori. One of the EMTs is Jimmy, played by Lance Guest, and Bud, played by Leo Rossi. Come and get Lori, and then we first hear the connection that Jimmy knows Lori because his little brother, who we never see, goes to high school with Lori. We also don't know how much older Jimmy is from Lori. They don't say that, but
I think Bud mentioned that he was like a college kid. So yeah.
So at the very least, he's like a year or so. Because in the first movie,
I think you could assume that Lori by this point is like at least a junior or senior, right?
I think she's a senior. I think they were talking about a dance or they were talking about prom, but because right off the bat,
I mean, they both look relatively the same.
Yeah, because like right off the bat, it's like you could definitely see that he has like a sparkle, even though she's like barely conscious and she's like afraid for her life. But there's like a little sparkle, and then. So they're still around the Doyle house, and Loomis and Sheriff Brackett is there, reprising their roles, Donald Pleasence and Charles Cypher. We never see his wife. He mentions his wife, but we never see her. But So they're at the house, and they're in the area still looking, and they're walking around, and that's when Loomis spots someone, and the Michael Myers like get up. From the mask to the mechanic jumpsuit, but which I find dumb because Michael stole the mask from the hardware store randomly. He only had the mechanic jumpsuit because he killed the mechanic on his way to Haddonfield. That wasn't like a costume you could buy in the store. So the fact that they see someone with the exact same mask but with white hair, which I thought was funny, especially coming to like thinking of Halloween 4 or 5. I mean, like yes, that wasn't a complete costume. The mask and the mechanic suit. It was just what Michael found randomly. So having a kid walking around with that costume was like,
definitely a leaner looking kid.
Yeah. With the hair on the costume was completely different from what Michael had.
With a completely different mask. Actually, if you buy the NECA Halloween 2 figure, it comes with the spare mask head
the Ben Tramer mask?
The Ben Tramer one.
Wow. It's completely different. And he's holding a candy bag and he's walking away nervously. Why would you think that was him? So Loomis goes to like shoot the gun. Did Loomis shoot the gun? Oh no,
Loomis never shot it. But he was about
that
to.
Cop car just came out of nowhere. Like obviously we know it's not Michael because we know he's still stalking around. But it's Ben Tramer, the kid who they were talking about, who Laurie had a crush on in the first movie.
He never got a chance to actually see him or anything like that.
That's like the second kill because the first kill is the Alice chick, and then the second kill is like a joint effort between Loomis, Brackett, and that random cop.
I mean, in the heat of the moment, you hear that Michael Myers just killed like 6 people.
I mean,
I could understand the desperation.
Loomis is a psychiatrist. He shouldn't be just like doing shit like irrationally. He needs to be like calm.
Well, that's definitely one of the lesser talked about things about Loomis. I think there's a theory, actually. There's like a movie theory where it's like it must have not been easy. Like, sure, Michael might be crazy and everything, but Loomis must have definitely not helped if every time he's just telling him, like, you're not a real person, you're just pure evil, you're pure evil. Like, just imagine how Loomis must have been in those therapy sessions or those meetings that he had with Michael. Like, he must have been so negative. Like,
he must have been a dick. Like, there's no hope for you. I'm done. Like, come on.
So, essentially, the theory is like, well, Loomis kind of is at least partially at fault for kind of creating this monster, for just being unsupportive and like telling the medical staff like he can't be saved, kill him, burn him. And you actually hear that in the Halloween 2018 in the voice cameo that he had.
So after post this crash, everything's like firing up, and another deputy pops up and tells Sheriff Brackett that
they found 3 bodies.
Where?
Across the street from the Doyle house. 3 kids. One of them was Annie.
And he breaks down, like, get in the car, they drive off. Cut to, we're meeting another new character, a nurse who's leaving a party with her friend. She's going to go report in to duty at the hospital. This also gives Michael a way of finding out that where the hell Laurie's at, because he walks past a kid with a boombox who's listening to a news segment about the murders.
Across the street from the home where the murders took place. The teenager was taken across town to Haddonfield Memorial Clinic.
So now Michael's walking around this entire time. At no point did the cops think to release a description of his mask and his outfit. They aren't sure if he's at large still. So I'm like, as precaution, you should put out an APB, like, so people can know what to look out for. Like,
yeah, because he is. You do see Michael walk around a shit ton of people, doesn't he, in this movie?
mm-hmm.
I mean, you just have to imagine that he did. So they get to the hospital.
They learned that the old Myers house is being rioted. People are like throwing rocks and shit at. And Loomis says this dumb line is,
The tribe. One of their number was butchered. This is the wake.
So then we see Laurie, and she's having like a nightmare or a dream, and it's a little girl who's with her mother, and she's like, I'm not your mother. And then we see a little Laurie, at a hospital, but with a boy who's a little bit older than her, who is just like looking out the window with a blank stare. When I first watched this movie, I was like, what the fuck was that? So this was the first time we ever saw Laurie's mom, and she's saying, I'm not your mother. Now we're seeing her with the little boy in hospital. With the little boy in the hospital, I still didn't pick up on that was Michael. What about you?
I mean, it was pretty obvious, wasn't it, that was him? Oh, well, this is like 20 years after, where you're like, oh yeah, Michael Myers and Laurie are related. So I imagine at the time it must have been like, oh shit, Laurie.
Well, when I first watched it, I had no like knowledge of that. So yeah, I was still, what the fuck is going on? But also, I mean, this was post Luke, I Am Your Father, so the main protagonist related to the main antagonist was kind of a...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because Empire Strikes Back came out a year before, so they would have been like either writing or in like pre-production when that movie came out. So I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. So I still didn't get it, still wasn't clicking for me, so I kind of just like moved on. I was like, okay, that was a weird ass flashback. And for me,
Which by the way, let's mention this because you were talking about the scene where the little girl, little Laurie, is with little Michael, right?
Mm-hmm.
I own one of the newer Halloween collections, and I never remember her like actually speaking like, "Don't hurt me, Michael! Don't hurt me, Michael!" And then yesterday we saw a weird version of it on YouTube where she's saying that.
Watched the TV version. That shit was weird, right?
It had a few added scenes, but also a few scenes that were cut, yeah.
And I'm looking at it, it was like, it cut like graphic violence and gore edited out, and minor additional scenes added, but those weren't minor. They were very like noticeable and very, very distracting. Because they threw me off the entire time, and I don't know. I was just like, this isn't what I remember. I did like the extra like dialogue between her and Jimmy, because I liked Jimmy. Because in the original, they leave Jimmy's status unknown. Because last time we see him in the theatrical version is when he's in the car with Laurie and he falls on the horn. But we don't see him at all after that. So that I hate, because he could have just passed out. He couldn't, there's no reason to think that he died and we never see this man again. But in the TV version, there's that, you know, at the end, they're like in the car, in the ambulance, and they're like, she's like,
we made it.
That was her and Jimmy, and I was like, okay. So that's why I always thought going into part 4 that Jimmy was the baby daddy.
Yeah, it just kind of makes sense, yeah. Now, I was going to say that ending I heard about, but I never actually seen it before, because I have, I guess, the theatrical cut, so that's the main one that I've seen.
I've only ever seen the main, like, theatrical version. Now Michael's at the hospital, and he's going to his kill. This is when the killing actually starts. First of all, like, well, the nurse Janet, she got the security guard because the phone line was down. She couldn't make any calls out. But there was still, like, power in this hospital because there were lights still on, but only for, like, certain parts of the hospital. Also, this hospital is empty as fuck.
Yeah.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, there's still tons of doctors at the hospital, tons of nurses. There's janitorial staff all over the hospital. There are patients who are still coming in and out. There's always something going on, and this hospital is too fucking empty. This is dumb. It shouldn't be this empty.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's not something that you think about, but like, yeah, it's like the hospital literally closes down, and like, if they were like a store that.
Because it closes down on Halloween. No, Halloween is usually when people are like doing stupid shit, and the hospital is like in high overdrive. Oh, okay, yeah, and then we get the first hospital kill is like searching around, trying to find out what's going on, why everything's turned off. He's going through all the dark rooms, and then Michael Myers appears behind him and hits him with a claw, the claw part of the hammer, and kills him.
Which, by the way, in this version of the movie, you actually see Michael kind of stalk him and move towards him.
I did like that more.
I did like that, but the theatrical one, just like you just kind of hear shit fall.
Yeah.
And you kind of react with the security guard, but you don't actually see him until he closes the door and he turns around and just the hammer kill. But
my biggest issue with the theatrical version of Halloween 2 is that they do away with the suspense and the stalking vibe, and it's more in tune with not Halloween, but Friday the 13th and all the later Halloween imitations, which focus more on the gore and got rid of like the stalking sense. Mm-hmm. That's what they lost when John Carpenter didn't come back to direct, because this movie is directed by Rick Rosenthal. This is actually his first movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is his first. So
I don't know about his history or what's his like.
No, this is his first. This is his. Is
this his first and only movie that he's ever made?
No, he's made after Halloween. He made a movie called Bad Boys in '83. He directed, I want to say, four or five more movies in the '80s. Then after that, he was.
I mean, it's definitely one of the better movies that we have.
Yeah, but see, he's responsible. But he's also responsible for. He's the director of Halloween Resurrection. Because after his 1988 movie, Distant Thunder, he doesn't direct a movie for another 10 years, which is Just a Little Harmless Sex in 1998, and then Halloween Resurrection in 2002. Yeah, so he didn't have that same sinister suspense, unnerving fear of like the dark and the sound like John Carpenter was able to capture. But throughout the hospital scene, we see Nurse Janet flirting with Bud. Yeah, and they were kind of like flirting. They go to the hot tub and...
Well, yeah, they're definitely a thing.
Yeah, and she tells him, she's like, hey, can you go turn up the temperature gauge on the pool, because the water is too hot. So when Bud goes back there, we kind of see, like off to the side in the corner of Michael killing Bud. So then he walks up in his creepy Michael way, puts his hand on the nurse's shoulder.
Forget it,
and she starts to caress him and whatnot, and then she finally turns around and he dumps her head in the pool and it starts to like burn her face.
Yeah, so the water was like boiling hot at that point.
Pools don't get that hot.
Well, that's a hospital tub.
It's a hot tub, but they don't.
Clearly, you see in the gauge the water is like scalding, so he.
Yeah, but no, what's funny? The actress says that water was super fucking cold.
And then that kill was actually cut in the version that we saw last night.
They cut a lot.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because the actual makeup effects for that kill in the theatrical was really cool.
I think they need to merge the two, and by merging, I think they should leave the ending with Jimmy and Laurie in the in the ambulance at the end. Leave that in, but get rid of that weird "Don't Hurt Me, Michael" part. Get rid of that. That's about it. Get rid of that. Only part they need to keep is the ending with Jimmy and Laurie from the television part.
Yeah.
And leave the extra dialogue between her and Jimmy. Anything with Laurie and Jimmy, keep that for the theatrical part. Throw away everything else and just release a final cut. So then we go back to Loomis, and who's now with Deputy Hunt, because Sheriff Brackett left after discovering his daughter's body. So now it's just Loomis and Hunt. They notify that something happened at the Haddonfield Elementary. So they go, and there is a drawing of Judith Meyer on the tabletop, and on the drawing it says "sister," and then on the blackboard, haven't seen one of those since I want to say like 2000. But on the chalk on the blackboard, Sam Hain. That's not how you say it.
How do you say it then?
Samhain. I don't even think I said it right.
Oh, isn't it like an Irish thing?
It's an Irish thing. So, and when it comes back up in part 3. That's how you say it. The way the guy says it in part 3 is actually how you pronounce it. That's all on there, and Loomis explains that
it's a Celtic word. Samhain. It means the Lord of the Dead.
And that's when Nurse Marion Chambers, who was the nurse driving Dr. Loomis in the first movie, comes back because they're ordering him back to Smith Grove Sanitarium because there's all this big drama and commotion because of Michael's killings and him being involved, and that's a direct connection to the sanitarium. And apparently the Illinois governor is involved, and he's like worried about how this looks. He leaves with Miriam, and on the way there, that's when they have a little conversation, and she reveals that there's these hidden files.
What file?
That girl, that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister. She was born 2 years before he was committed. 2 years after, his parents died and she was adopted by the Strodes. They requested that the records be sealed in order to protect the family.
How would he know that that was his sister? He murdered his sister years before. So to then come around and he still
I thought
lives...
she was already born by the time he killed.
I don't think so. But either way, how would he know who adopted her? How would he know that she was still in Haddonfield? How would he know that Laurie Strode was his sister?
You know, just the supernatural sense.
He could sniff it? Like, I don't understand. Like, if they explained it like, oh, he noticed her because she resembled...
If he could absorb 6 shots, he can tell his sister.
Maybe she resembles Judith. Maybe she resembles their mother. Like, I don't. It's not explained, and that kind of always bothered me. So when their parents died in 1965, the Strodes, who also live in Haddonfield, adopted her, didn't tell her anything. But how would Michael know that? I don't want to get stuck on that. That's gonna trip me out. So now that we know that this connection, Loomis is like, okay, he's going after Laurie because that's his sister. He killed one sister, he's gonna kill another sister. We have to go. He pulls a gun out.
What does you fellas usually do? Fire a warning shot, right?
Back at the hospital, and we see Jimmy's there looking after Laurie. Laurie is pretend to be in an anaphylactic shock coma, but she's not, because the next time because in the one we watched last night, we see Michael stalk in the room, opens the door, goes to the bed, and she's not in there. And there was some extra scenes of him like leaving the room, turning back around, looking at the bed, being upset that she's not in there, and then I've never seen this before. He's closing the door, he's looking annoyed. Like, I was like, what the hell? But then we see Laurie, who I thought, when you mentioned that her ankle was broken, but this entire time she's like running her ass down the hallway.
Yeah, I don't know if I just never paid attention to it, but just watching it yesterday, I don't know if it might be a difference in the cuts from the different movies. The girl that was working with the security guard on like repairing the power, she actually told Jimmy in this version, she's like, oh yeah, she actually has a broken bone in her ankle. And I was like, oh snap! I thought she had just like some sort of like swelling or something. But this girl be running everywhere, like at the end. Well,
right?
There are moments where she does like in pain.
And she's like tumbling over and shit.
I'm pretty sure if you have a fracture in your ankle, like you're screaming. If you're running, I'm pretty sure you're probably screaming in pain if you have to run. So
yes.
I was like, they should have just omitted that detail.
But she's like running, she's climbing over shit, she's hiding from people, and then that's when the next nurse, Nurse Jill, gets that iconic kill when she's like calling Laurie down the hall and she sees Laurie.
Yes.
But then Michael appears behind her and just like with one hand like stabs with the knife and lifts her up. And her clogs fall off. Amazing.
That initiates the big chase of the movie, you know, between her and Michael. And yeah, that's a really, really intense sequence. You know, that she gets to the basement, right? And that's where we say that she like climbs up the fucking window, even with the broken bone in her ankle, and then she gets to the elevator and she's like pushing it, waiting for that thing to you know, get to the basement. And meanwhile you have he would have caught up to her if he simply ran. But my guy...
How did she get outside?
Must have been after the elevator part, right?
I don't remember how she... I just know that at some point she's outside. She sees a car. And I'm like, when did Laurie leave the hospital and get into this car? And why didn't she drive the fuck off? But then, during all that, Jimmy passes out. And in the theatrical version, this is the last time we see Jimmy. Not knowing if he's dead or alive. Pretty sure he's alive. Pretty sure he just like... Because all he did was slip on some blood and bump his head. So he could still have been alive. He falls on a horn, though. So that alerts Michael that someone's outside in the vehicle. So then she gets the fuck out, but then, boom, there's Michael in the parking lot, walking behind her. So Laurie running towards the hospital. Luckily, Loomis and Miriam are not at the hospital, and they're in the hallways with the cop that he pulled the gun out on. So now they open her up, the door, let her in. Michael somehow is able to just walk through the glass door with like not even a stumble, with no like glass in his body. He just walks through it with no hesitation. Yeah. And he gets shot 4 or 5 more times, falls down. And while the nurse and Loomis are comforting. While Loomis is comforting Lori, he sends the nurse out to get help on the radio, and then the cop stupidly squats over to like,
Stop! He's dead. No, he's not. Look at him. He's still breathing.
He does it anyway, and he dies. And then we have another big like showdown with Michael, Loomis, and Lori, which then goes to what I think is the stupidest scene in the entire movie. When was it Lori who shot Michael's eyes out?
Yeah.
Which should have been fatal. You shot him in both his eyes, so the bullet would have traveled back to his brain. He should be dead. But the scene that follows with Loomis and Lori turn on all the gas canisters and Michael like trying to follow the sound, I did like that one.
He does look a little funny, doesn't he though? Like just swinging without being able to see.
With like blood like coming down his eyes, and that against the white mask is it's pretty cool shot. But then we get to, Lori runs out, and I forgot, Loomis said a line.
It's time, Michael.
And it blows up because they released oxygen into the room. But it blows up, and somehow, Lori thinks it's all over with, she's calm, and then we see Michael like stumbling out, like completely engulfed in flames, and then he collapses dead. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And then that's how it ends. But then it cuts to Lori. In the theatrical version, it cuts to Lori being put into the ambulance, but she's freaking out because she's having a vision of Michael's burning body. But in the version that I like, the ending that I like is the one that we watched last night with it's her and Jimmy, and she's like, "We made it," which I think is the one they should have used.
Yeah, it definitely is the good ending, I guess.
Yep. This movie was made on a budget of $2.5 million, a lot more than the last one, and it made $25.5 million in the box office in North America alone.
How much did it make here?
$25.5 million.
Oh damn!
I think this is actually, for a time, this was the most successful of the franchise. I think Part 2 was the most successful one for a long. I think up until this most recent one, this was the most successful.
So I'm looking at the original ending right here, and I'm seeing that they just get Lori to the hospital to the ambulance, and then they just kind of drives off, and that's the ending. That's kind of. No, I definitely prefer the second one better for sure.
Because without the second one, you don't know what the hell happened to Jimmy.
Yeah.
Which is like dumb.
Yeah, yeah.
But then also John Carpenter and Debra Hill, who wrote the first Halloween and produced it, they had originally considered setting this in several years after Halloween, and they wanted to have Michael track Lori to her new home in a high-rise building in a metropolitan area, somewhere downtown Chicago, and he was gonna just like go through the building trying to kill her. But that reminds me a lot of the plot of Poltergeist 3, which took place in the Hancock building downtown Chicago. So
I don't know. I haven't seen the Poltergeist movies yet.
So that and then but during like script setting sessions, it changed to Haddonfield Hospital. But besides that, like, this movie wasn't that bad. It's a good sequel. It's a good sequel, and this was supposed to be the end of the Michael Myers, Laurie Strode, Dr. Loomis story. There were no plans to ever reveal, like, to come back, to return to this story.
Right, yeah, because obviously the next one is Halloween 3, which is what John Carpenter originally wanted the Halloween franchise to be? Was it just a bunch of anthology stories?
Yeah, he wanted it to be based on Halloween. Like the day itself was causing madness and like crazy shit to happen to people, whether it be supernatural or a person just breaks and loses control. So that's kind of where it was supposed to be. That's where it went in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Which, if you're stuck with us this far, we will be covering that next week. Which I haven't seen a lot of Season of the Witch, so my memory is that I don't like it, but I haven't seen it in adulthood.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I do like it. So
when I do my Halloween marathon, I never include Season of the Witch. So it's been a good like 10 years since I've seen Season of the Witch.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so I'm excited. But before we wrap it up, what's your final thoughts?
I absolutely love this movie just like I do the first one. Definitely, there's a lot of great moments in this film. A classic. I have it. I'm excited for it to release in 4K, or maybe it already is in 4K. But if it is, I definitely have to go pick it up because
I think
it's a fantastic movie.
I think they're planning on releasing like a whole new like box set.
Yeah, that's what I remember seeing. Yeah, I think it might be releasing like in September, so I'll see if I'll get it.
They'll definitely do it before the new one comes out, or they'll probably wait until the trilogy is completely done so they have the complete box set.
Yeah.
Anything you think they could have changed or improved?
I mean, I enjoy the movie a lot, but watching it yesterday, I don't know if it was because the cut was a little weird, but I do think the pacing could have been a little better.
Yes.
It definitely feels like, I don't know why, but it feels like this movie doesn't have a lot of Michael like the first one. So
no, they really don't. That's like the worst part. Like it's trying to like set up the whole family aspect and does trying to do all that and actually like leaves.
Set up the family. You have you have many scenes in the hospital with just kind of like blood and stuff, and it's like, yeah, you go through like a large you get through a decent portion of the movie without like seeing Michael like kill somebody. So.
I mean, because after the first opening kill, there's no kill for like 5 minutes, and then it cuts to Loomis and Co. killing Ben Tramer by accident, but then there's no kill for a good like 15-20 minutes until we get to the hospital.
Yeah.
And speaking of the hospital, when we get to the hospital, there's that mom there with her kid who bit the apple that had razors in it or some shit. I've never actually seen a case of that happening. I know no one who has ever like dealt with that.
And there was no point showing that either because it's not like they get stuck in the hospital with them. You see them get in, you see the mom with the kid,
we don't see the mom die.
And then you see them leave, and then you see them leave. At least in the original cut. So.
Now, if the mom would have died, and then Laurie is like trying to protect this kid and herself. Then yeah, I get it. But really, just see them. She just like established that we're in the hospital, but we don't see them in the hospital for that long. We don't see anyone in the hospital. This hospital is like densely populated.
This hospital is dead ass, like dead.
Which is something that I would have changed. Like, make it super populated.
Literally, Laurie is the only patient in this hospital.
And we see 3 nurses, 2 paramedics. We see 1 doctor who's killed off screen. We see 4 nurses who are all killed. All female, by the way. 1 paramedic dies, for sure. And there's no doctor, no other patients. Like, I feel like this should have had a high kill count, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, it should have been like a crazy massacre. Like, to a point where, no, I don't think Michael likes to kill without a mask. So I was gonna like, he could have took off his, because no one knows what he looks like without his mask.
Yeah.
So he could have got lost in the shuffle in a busy hospital, but no. No. Well, cash or pass?
Cash or pass? Yeah, I mean, for me, easily, it's a cash. Definitely watch it in 4K or Blu-ray. That's definitely the way to go. But watch both cuts because the second cut is a little strange, but it has like a few extra scenes for sure.
I say it's a cash too, but I also agree. You need to if the theatrical version feels like it left a lot of unanswered questions, then you should watch the TV version too. I still think they should find a way to merge those two for a final cut because there are like 2 or 3 scenes that should be added to the theatrical. Especially, to be honest, everything with Jimmy should be added to the theatrical cut because I liked their relationship and I think the ambiguous ending with her and Jimmy riding out into the sunset is a great way to end what was supposed to be the Michael Strode story. So it's a cash for me. I definitely recommend it. So thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Join us next week for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Thank you guys.
Very excited for that. Let's go.
The Haddonfield Horrors Podcast is a Letters to Media production.
Should we do an intro?